Hello, and we're back again, like our second episode now.
Hello. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm good, Aaron. I am glad that we used our names up front this time, instead of waiting 15 minutes to announce who we were. But here we are, back again.
Always a good thing. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, I am too. And it was good that we got some positive feedback from the few people that listened, and more people listened than I thought would have, which is good. And I think this week we have a better topic to even talk about.
We do.
More interesting for sure, which we'll get into that. I will say last week in recording and talking about the history of history, it had me thinking very differently about things as I was researching this week's topic as well. Like, I'm more of a skeptic now than anything when it comes to anything I read, whether it's Wikipedia, whether it's like documents, historical documents, whatever. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm going down to the library and pulling out a card catalog and researching this week to week. I'm literally going on Google, like we talked about. But I'm second guessing, like, is any of this real? Like, truly, is any of the stuff we're talking about real? So I'm glad that, we chatted about that last week, but I'm still a skeptic. And I hope whatever we talk about tonight is real based on our opinion and what we want to share. So maybe, I don't know.
It'll be interesting. This topic is interesting, especially since we're talking about wife selling. So
yeah, that is our topic tonight. It is wife selling your wife. And we had a whole list of topics that we still have an actual Google Drive doc that we keep adding things to, like, hey, these are the things we want to talk about that are interesting in history that people don't know about. And I saw this one right after we recorded last week, and I was like, let's just do this one. It wasn't even on our list.
You did. You sprung it on me. I was thinking something else, but then when I saw it, I was like, well, let's go for it, because we're working this angle and you're throwing me right in.
and it's a weird kind of topic where I've actually asked a couple people this week, because I've had a couple of fans already say, what's the topic of this week? And I've shared that, and they're like, I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah,
like
I had
that.
no idea either. And when I clicked the link that you sent me in the text, I was like, well, it sure is going to be interesting. So I can't wait to dive in, and thank you, fans, for listening. This is so cool.
I know, all three of you, we really appreciate and we applaud you.
I thought there were 10.
I know. We'll get there. We're going to get there maybe by episode 8. I will start off and say we have a website now. I want to plug that for sure.
Because of Jeff. We have all of the social media and the website because of Jeff. So thank you.
Yes, you can find us on the gram, on Facebook, YouTube. You can actually catch our episodes on YouTube as well when they're done. And it's just a boring thing to watch, but at least to listen to. And then our website, which is yesteryearuntold.com. So I want to throw that out there, because we're going to start putting some blogs up there and some things that we talk about from week to week in written form, and some of our opinions on it and some other cool stuff. And one day we'll start selling merch on it, because we're those people.
Well, and also you placed on the website that, if fans want to write a question about one of the episodes, then we are happy to answer on the following. Yeah.
Well, and if you want to be interviewed, please, by all means, submit. Let us know what you want to talk about. We would love to interview you. Eventually, in future episodes, we're going to start interviewing some historians and professors and people that just like history in general. I thought you were going to say on the website we had a donate button, because I kind of slipped that in there.
I did see that. Yes.
Anybody that wants to donate to the cause, I'm definitely going to plug that hardcore as well.
We're going to use that for a margarita while we talk.
Exactly. We need it for sure. Before we jump in, though, last week you talked about how we were family. Yes. So I would love for you to explain, to all of our 3 listeners or 10 or whatever it is, how we're connected, because I think it's super interesting.
Yes. So Jeff and I are family, and he is married to my cousin, my double cousin, Megan. And we are double cousins because, and I'm trying to think of this visually to explain to all the listeners, but think about a big old X. And my dad, my father, is the brother of her mom. And then her dad is the sibling of my mom. So there's like a big old X there. So our blood line is exactly the same, except for, of course, like siblings don't have the exact blood as each other either. But I mean, it's the closest that you can get. So it's
you're like half
Freaky
siblings with
deaky. We're
blood.
like half siblings.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there was no like wife swap or anything going on with your parents and uncles and aunts and stuff. It was
No.
just mom and dad over here, brother and sister here, and they were like, "Hey, like I like that guy, I like that woman, and we're all kind of family already. So let's do this." And I don't know who was first. I think it was your parents who were first
Yeah,
married, right?
they met on a church softball, and
Okay,
then I mean it was a small town, so and not too many people around.
not a
No.
lot to choose from, is what we're hearing. So
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, I mean it's interesting, it's cool, and I'm happy that we're family. So
yeah, double cousins by marriage for you and I, and I know Megan adores you as a sister, so that's
Mhm.
cool. And
And I love
really,
her.
yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I do too. So
I hope so.
I want to throw that out there, but I think that's cool. Like the double cousin thing. I remember when I first met Megan and she told me about that, I was
Mhm.
confused because there were events for her mom's side of the family I would go to, and you were there.
Yeah.
And then there were supposedly events for her dad's side of the family, and you were going to be there as well. And I was like, I'm really lost. Like my mind can't process what's happening because I'm a little slow too. But
Megan and I always saw each other every Sunday, and it would be flip flop. So we played Barbies, and we would build these massive Barbie mansions like in our rooms. And one would be at my house, and then the next Sunday we'd go back to hers, and we would keep them standing through the weeks and like change it up. And I mean, it never would have happened that way if we were double cousins. I don't think
it's true. It's true. You had
it's
that
true.
benefit. I like it. I like it though.
Yeah.
It's a great story. And if you don't know what a double cousin is, go look it up and
Hmm.
you'll see that it just means cool people did some cool things and now their family's even closer. But I like it. So that's us. Each week we'll share a little bit about ourselves. I'm not a double cousin to anyone, but I somehow may be related to some people that were already my family to begin with. I'm not sure. We're going to figure that out a little bit because I think there is some of that going on in our family. So,
Well, it probably
uh,
is on everybody's when it goes
well,
way back.
yeah, it's
The
I always
bloodlines just start to connect.
I worry about the day when we do all this DNA testing that I see Megan's name listed as, some kind of distant cousin of mine or something, on that side. So I refuse to accept it. But
Well, if you're Megan just shared with me, we are like the early settlers in Eastern North Carolina. So if your family is not in that region, then I think you're
yeah, yeah, no,
okay.
I think I'm okay. I can't remember where they came in, but
Hmm.
I'm hoping not Eastern Carolina. But so here we are this week, speaking of my
Hmm.
wife, talking about selling wives. And I couldn't imagine selling her. She may from time to time want me to, just to kind of get out of the relationship. No, but we have this thing that we're looking at, and I started doing some research on it. I thought it was interesting. And so before we get into specific wife selling, I wanted to take it a little bit further back to a word called coverture. I
Mm,
don't know if you saw that anywhere. That word listed when we were researching
I
coverture.
did.
And basically, coverture
Hmm.
was a legal doctrine where, upon marriage, a woman's legal rights and her obligations were basically taken over by her husband. So she became the property of her husband, in essence. Everything that she owned at that time became his. Every decision, everything that
Hmm.
she wanted to do in life ran through her husband, which to me was insane to read about. That, and kids were that way too. Like everybody was the property of this man, of the husband at that point. And so there were two types of women during this time. And I'm talking a lot of what we're focused on here is 17th, 18th, and early 19th,
Hmm.
maybe a little 20th century too, early parts of basically UK, that part of Europe, and some of America.
That's right.
Um, so just want to preface that I'm sure it was different in different societies at different times, but this is what we're speaking on. So if you were not married as a female, you were part of something called, I think you were tagged as femme solo, is what I read. And that meant you could own property and you could do stuff.
Oh, I
Basically.
didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if
Femme
you,
solo.
once you got married, you were femme covert.
Hmm.
Femme covert is best to
Hmm.
pronounce it. And that was it. And so this lasted even in the US until the 1960s in some states in the United States. Like there was remnants of this coverture until the 60s. And then in 1972, so as recent as 1972,
For
two,
real? I
yes,
did
two,
not see this.
two U.S. states allowed a wife accused in criminal court to offer as legal defense that she was obeying her husband's orders, and they got off on it because there was a part of this coverture type amendment where she basically was like, I was doing what my husband told me, and by law that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Wow.
Up till 1972 that was still in court in the US. And something I read that was super weird and had no idea, which we got to do more episodes on women, period, and just literally just the battle you guys face constantly. And I think about it because I have so many daughters, like,
And you're talking to
well,
a all women's college graduate.
exactly.
So I get it. I mean, I've probably read some of these things, and I mean, as a woman, definitely felt them.
It's
So
awful. It's awful.
mhm.
And up until the 1970s, women weren't even able to get credit cards on their own. Until the 1970s, they had to use their husband's signature in order to get a credit card in the 1970s.
I know you've probably watched Mad Men, right? I mean,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that essence of obeying and
Yes.
why we had the 70s, why the liberation
Right.
happened. And yeah. Mhm.
What, and you think about the 50s family, and that's
Oh,
when
yeah.
you really think about like the male, he went to work, the wife was at home cooking and taking care of the kids and just obeyed his every command. And it's one of the reasons I love Megan so much is because she's nothing like that. In the sense, like, she makes amazing food for sure, because I'm not good at cooking, but she doesn't have that attitude of obeying command kind of for me. Like, she's very much challenges me in so many
Mhm.
ways, and I love that. Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine having it any other way, almost, so to speak, like it, especially what we're going to get into with the Selling Wives, like a slavery type, persona to it. Truly.
It almost feels like it's more work in another
Yeah.
way, because you're telling somebody what to do all the time if they have to listen like that. But that's why we're about to talk about this wife selling, because it was easier, right? It was less costly for somebody to do this.
Well, it's interesting because like the coverture, they basically, the idea behind it was when a man and a woman get married, then the husband and wife are one. That was
Mhm.
the idea behind it. But really it was the one is the husband, and the woman is completely just eliminated from it. She couldn't own property, she couldn't
Yeah.
sign any documents in her contract. She couldn't obtain education against her husband's wishes. She couldn't keep a salary. If she was permitted to work, she was required to give all of her wages to her husband. I
Mhm.
mean, basically, that is slavery. It was, you marry me, I'm going to dictate your entire life.
It was, and what I noted was marriage was an economic agreement instead of an expression of love. Like when
Right.
people got married, it was more to help each other out than it was because you wanted to have a wonderful, happy ever after. It was more about like breeding, having children, helping them on the farm, using this other
Logistical.
person as a job. Yeah, as like an
Yeah.
employee. Mhm.
And well, I will say one exception during this time of coverture was the Queen. The Queen of England
Mm.
was exempted from this rule, which doesn't surprise me by any means. So before we get into Selling Wives, one thing I read.
How much respect she has for the other women in the
Oh,
country.
of course. And it's, it's the same queen back in the 1700s that we have alive today. So literally.
Good point.
So this, I will share this one last point, and then we'll move into Selling Wives, because that's fun. But
I don't know if it's fun.
it's fun to talk about. I've never been involved in this. Thanks for correcting me on that one, so I don't sound like a complete
It's all
douche.
good.
Yeah. So Abigail Adams was married to John Adams.
Mhm.
And in March of 1776, John Adams was working on the Code of Laws. And she wrote to John and said, in the new Code of Laws, which I suppose it would be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. And basically, she was asking for relief from coverture. John Adams responded, right? This was his response to his wife. I cannot but laugh. That's what he said to her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that bums me out.
Yeah, because dude was not a good guy. Like, obviously, that was his wife saying this to him, wrote a letter. And, that took some time back then with the ink and everything. Like, she had to sit out and, like, really spend some time writing this letter to him.
I'm actually surprised to hear that because I thought they had a really good marriage.
Well, that TV show I watched made it seem like they did.
Yeah, that's what I
Not
was
sure
thinking
that's
about.
real, Aaron.
I know my husband read the book and he always spoke pretty highly of him. So now it's making me question.
What's his name? What was his name? Paul, the guy that acted as him. Why can't I think of that guy's name?
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti did
Good
great.
Character actor.
Yeah. He did great. And like, it made Thomas Jefferson look like an asshole in that show more than anything. But I read this, and again, back to history is, it's kind of I'm skeptic of what's real and what's not. I imagine he did say that. He was probably honestly like, get in your place, woman. Like, why are you hollering at me like this? I don't have time for this drama. We're here doing great stuff for the country, and you're hitting me with this bullshit about women and their rights and stuff like that. I feel like that was his attitude with her.
I guess he liked the way it was, so he laughed and scoffed at her idea of having a little bit more freedom.
Yeah, he wasn't a fan. So
he was a man of his times.
Yeah, he was. And that was John Adams, and then we had John Quincy Adams, which I guess was his son, and that has no point in anything. I just like mentioning both of them. So selling wives. All right, so this was a practice that
wasn't legal, wasn't exactly legal.
Right, not legal, but turned heads for sure. And one of the reasons this practice came to be, and again, 17th, 18th century, 19th century, and a little bit, it kind of rolled over into the 20th century, that I'll share at least the last date that I saw of it. But one of the reasons that it led to a solution to this, there were in that time 5 ways to separate if your marriage is unhappy. And tell me if I'm wrong, because you've done research on it too. I'm going to kind of list what I have, and I'm sure you got something deeper because you're our researcher. For sure. And
I think you're doing a pretty good job right now. Yeah.
I'll just make up shit. I'll literally just make up shit just because it sounds cool. I didn't make up the John Adams thing, though. I promise.
This is why people don't believe in history, Jeff.
I know, it's why I don't, because I'm a skeptic of someone like myself. So, but I will be honest, I will not make up shit for this show. I really won't. I'll whatever I read of someone else's, I'll add and just talk about it. But all right, so 5 types. One was to sue the courts. And that was only if adultery, life-threatening cruelty, and you weren't allowed to remarry if that happened. Okay, so you got that one?
Yes.
All right, hit me. You hit me with the rest, because what else did you find?
Well, I didn't put all 5 down, but the ones that stood out to me were, so from the 1550s until 1857. When the Matrimonial Causes Act became law, divorce in England was only possible. So private separation. So it was only possible, if at all, by the complex and costly procedure of a private act of parliament. I mean, they make it legitly hard to separate in England.
An act of parliament.
An act of parliament.
Which was time consuming, which cost a ton of money. An act of parliament to separate from your spouse.
And if you think about society, even now, there's the 1% in America who have all the money. And so when you're thinking about England during this period of time, who has the money, who does not? So you see where this is leading us.
Yeah.
So although the divorce court set up in the wake of the 1857 Act, they made the procedure considerably cheaper. Divorce remained prohibitively expensive for the poorer members of society. So an alternative was to obtain the private separation. So it was an agreement negotiated between both spouses, embodied in a deed of separation drawn up by a conveyancer. And
That's a good way to say it. Conveyancer. I like it.
I
saw that word too. I have that word too, and I was like, I'm gonna let her figure out what this one is.
So let's go on to desertion and elopement. And so that actually happened quite a bit. And that was when the wife was either forced out of the family,
or the husband set
up a new family.
I saw that. He really just set up a new family and was like, all right, I'm gonna need you to go. Like, I got this boo over here. I got some kids, you can keep these kids.
Like it still happens.
It does. So And then it comes to the fifth one, right? The
Yeah.
fifth one, wife
You do this
selling.
one. You read
Wife
this.
selling. That's it. That's all I'm right. I wrote wife selling. I didn't write anything else.
Oh, I did. I mean, it was
Literally.
like, I mean, really, you didn't write anything else about
No,
that?
no, no. I did. I set it up almost like is this like cliffhanger to get into the details. But I'll explain what I read about wife selling, at least what the experience was like, and then talk
Yes.
about some of
Oh,
the breaking down of it.
Wait. So I do have to say this, though. I mean,
All right, let's hear it.
so these are capital, like the laws respecting women. This is respecting women as they regard their natural rights. Observed that for the poor, wife selling was viewed as a, quote, method of dissolving marriage when, quote, a husband and a wife find themselves heartily tired of each other and agree to part if the man has a mind to authenticate the intended separation by making it a matter of public notary. I mean, did you hear that? The laws respecting women as they regard their natural rights. I mean, I have to read that over again as a woman because there is no respect there. But
Well, and actually, I saw this quote from this judge, Sir William Blackstone, who basically kind of put all this into place back in 1753. Said the very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during the marriage, or at least is consolidated and incorporated into that of her husband, under whose wing, protection, and cover she performs everything. That was what was written out as a law during this time. The judge implemented it, minus any of the queens. The judge implemented this. So, yes, I could see why this was a horrible time to be alive as a woman and a child, because children were sold during this as well, you know.
Yeah.
And
I read actually in some of the research, it said that some of the women and children be living in like squalor in a room in the house if the husband was tired of them. They would live in a room and then he would have the rest of the house and they would stay in there pretty much all the time.
And these are the founders of our history. And, like I think about like just everything we were founded on.
Well, I mean, wait, some people are like that, but you always have like a part of society that is just turnkey and.
Well, it's funny because the more I read about it, I read several different articles, and it was almost described as like an event, right?
It
so
was.
they go down the market,
Yes.
they're drinking beer, like,
yeah.
and like sometimes they would said the man would put a ribbon or a rope around his wife's neck or arm or waist, and he would lead her to the market, and then he'd auction her off.
And in a halter.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So, yeah, the reports state that they put an advertisement in the local newspaper.
Of course. Why not?
They had to have everybody come out.
Yeah.
And then, it took form of an auction or a local market. And then they put a halter around. And this was symbolic. Did you read that?
No, you tell me about it.
It was symbolic. The halter was symbolic around her neck or arm. And it was symbolic in the way that once she was sold, they took the halter and gave it to the other man that had bought her.
Oh, wow.
And then if they went a little further, they actually signed a piece of paper. But, that's just too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
And a lot of them
pedestrian.
Right, it is. And a lot of times they were drinking over it, like just having a good time, almost like a sporting event, so to speak. And like this dude selling off his wife and his kids and like just whatever, they're high-fiving each other, and then going about their merry ways after the fact. And some of I want to share this because I saw this, some of the prices that were paid for the wives, right? On the high end, during this time was £100 plus 25 pounds for each of the two children. There was an actual written down document of this, which is equivalent today to about 14,500 pounds, right? So that was the high end, equivalent to 14,500. They're selling his wife and two kids. On the low end, sometimes it was for a glass of ale.
Oh,
just give me a glass of beer, man, and I'm good to go.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that. I did see like 2 pounds.
Or like 3/4 of a penny, I saw.
Oh, no.
3/4
I
of a
mean,
penny.
It's all miserable.
5 shillings. I need 5 shillings and an ale. It's like that's what the equivalent of like this. It's insane. So going back to this judge, Sir William Blackstone, who implemented the Marriage Act of 1753, where I quoted what he said about women. Before that time, there was no marriage in England. That was actually something you went and formally did in this sense that became legal. And so before this time, this was interesting to me, and I just want to throw this fact out there. All it was both parties had to agree to union, and you had to be of the legal age, which was 14 for boys and 12 for girls. That was the legal age.
But people didn't live till like 25 then, I guess that's why they were getting married so young. I mean, I want to think this.
Maybe, but like I have some daughters that are over 12 now, and I'm like, like
12 and 14.
No. So that was interesting. But then this guy implemented this marriage act, and basically it was a way to make money, I think, too. You know, he was like, look, we can make money off this. People got to pay to get married. Then they're going to have to pay to get divorced because we know they're not going to stay together. You know, that was probably why they did it. But it was fascinating to read about this in a couple different ways. And actually later on, I have some like other things I want to share about it. But I did read, and I don't know if you have more you want to talk about before I get to this point, so I don't want to step ahead.
Wait, can I say this one thing?
Sure.
Because I'm a military spouse, so this was really interesting to me. But sales became more common in the mid-18th century as a result of husbands being abroad in the military, the Navy, or being transported to the colonies. Did you see this?
I read over it. Because they were gone for periods of time.
Yes. And so it said it was commonly believed that an absence of 7 years constituted a divorce. So when the first husband returned to find his wife had a new family, the dilemma was solved by the first husband selling his wife in the marketplace for a nominal sum, and it was not recognized as legal. So as the one wife had to wait for her first husband to die before being able to marry the father of her children, and then her grandson gives her away.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. I just thought it was interesting that it, at the turn of the century, mid-century, mid-18th century, it started to get sales kind of went up and were more common with the military because they were gone. I mean, it makes sense, but it's still disturbing.
Well, it's disturbing because it wasn't technically legal, but no one ever did anything. There's some things I saw in here where basically the legal system turned a blind eye, and there's entries found in baptismal registers that said things like, from Parley in Essex, dated 1782, Amy, daughter of Moses Stebbing, by a bought wife delivered to him in a halter. And I'm not sure if those words even mean anything, and if I wrote that down wrong because it didn't make sense as I said it, but you get the point of it. Basically,
he was bought in that halter. Yeah,
right.
So, yeah.
Right. They bought in a halter in a baptismal registry. So people knew this was going on. They were accepting it. A jury in Lincolnshire in 1784 ruled that a man who sold his wife had no right to reclaim her from her purchaser. Basically, the validity of the transaction the jury gave, it was in court, and they're like, no, because you sold your wife, you don't get her back. In court, they were like, yeah, you sold your wife, so look, dude, you can't get her back. And then in 1819, this was an interesting thing I saw. A magistrate tried to prevent a sale in Derby in the UK. He was pelted and driven away by a crowd when he was trying to stop the sale of a wife. Wow. And he said afterwards, although the real object of my sending the constables was to prevent the scandalous sale, the apparent motive was that of keeping the peace. As to the act of selling itself, I do not think I have the right to prevent it or even oppose any obstacle to it, because it rests upon a custom preserved by the people, of which perhaps it would be dangerous to deprive them by any law for that purpose. So he just threw his hands in the air and was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not even going to deal with these people. They've been doing it for a while.
It's like reality television. It's just people, they wanted it. They were feeding off of it when they go to these markets, and just they loved it. They loved watching these people in misery.
So exactly. And this guy, he's like, man, like, screw this shit. You're going to pelt me and I'm going to stop. Like, y'all just do what you want to do. If you want to act stupid, we'll watch from over here like a reality show. I'm going to watch Jersey Shore over here, and I'll make fun of you and talk about, but just do what you want to do with your people. That's kind of how he was saying it. And we got into this. You and I spoke on this briefly before, but as we got into this, we both realized there's a twist. There's a twist in all of this. So I walked in, as probably just like you did, thinking men are assholes. Everything's against women. This sucks. This is insane. I can't believe this, which I do believe all that still, especially because women were property. They were property.
Yes, they were property.
and it's still set up for the things that we're
They didn't
going
have a
through.
choice. Yeah,
Right.
they didn't have a choice legally,
But
but
there's remnant effects of this, though, because you think about the Me Too movement and everything we're dealing with in 2020 is
Mhm.
remnant effects of decisions like this in the past to make women property where men don't want to. It's just like we can get into race too with this, but just
Mhm.
like men don't want to see women as equals. And it's because of
Yeah.
this passed on history after generation because of stupid shit like this that was, just this normal thing. But
Yeah,
there's
very
a twist.
systematic.
There's a
Mhm.
twist. Please share with us what this twist is.
The wives had to agree to be sold.
Yes.
Like, they actually had to agree that they wanted to be sold as well because of the fact that a lot of times the women were sick of their husbands.
Yes.
So they were in unhappy marriages.
Yeah.
And I read, and I can understand because we just said that it was an economic agreement for people to get married, which that means that a lot of people were in unhappy marriages. That normally happens when you marry somebody and you're around them and you don't know anything
Right.
about them.
Right.
And so to get rid of their spouse, they would agree to be sold to somebody else. And a lot of times the person would be their lover. Did you see
Yes.
that?
I saw that. And
Yes.
that's what was interesting. So a couple things here. What you said is true. During this time, people generally were just unhappy as people.
Mhm.
There were a lot of changes going on. There were a lot of different political changes. The government was changing, and just kind of like now for us too, where everybody's like, I'm revolting. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not going to wear a mask.
Yep.
I'm not going to do this. That kind of stuff. People were generally just kind of not in a good place. So then they'd get married, like you talked about, they were miserable. And like we talked about the barrier of getting a divorce. So
Mhm.
some of the times, almost a lot of the times from the little bit of research I did, the woman, like you said, ended up with her side piece. Like
Yeah.
literally, like it was her side piece. And she's like, look, and a lot of this was because men could come back and sue her new boo. So if she ended up like with a new
Yeah.
guy, she left her husband for him, the old husband could come sue him for this and basically take anything he wanted to kind of settle this debt or whatever. So they work out a deal, and she's like, look, homie, I'm gonna need you to come down. We're gonna go to this public auction. We're gonna make it a thing so that we know that we're getting divorced. You come down and you better bid the highest for me because I'm not trying to go home with somebody else. And they set it up that way.
Yeah, that's right. That's how they work their deal. I wanted to quote this because I practiced this because it's not as easy to say, but it said a wife in an unhappy marriage was sold in Winlock Market, and she was quite determined that the transaction should go ahead despite her husband's last minute misgivings. Quote, it turned shy and tried to get out of the business, but Maddie Manna stuck to it. He flipped an apron in a GERD man's face and said, let be your rogue. I will be sold. I want to change.
I saw that. I saw it, and I was gonna take it. And I started reading it, and I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm gonna know how to say this."
I practiced it.
You practice a lot.
I was trying to do it in like a Guinea accent.
Yeah, where you're from, which is basically what it is Guinea.
It is. Yeah, they're like old colonists from that region in that area.
Like Tangier Island. I always say that Megan's mom sounds like she's from Tangier Island when she has old videos of her talking.
Yeah, Guinea is a lot like Tangier. Yes.
Oh man, but I saw that too. So she was like, "Look, I'm gonna get sold.
I want
today.
a change. I want a change.
I want out of this." And they did say, although like sometimes in the 19th century wives objected, but records of 18th century women specifically, it was them trying to get out of the unhappy marriage, and they were the ones insisting to do so, to set all this up, which is why we go back to this party where everybody's just going down the street celebrating. Like the dude's like, look, I'm tired of this chick. She's like, I'm tired of this dude. Let's have a beer. Oh, there's my new honey over there. Like he's going to bid and I'm going to walk home with him today. It's kind of weird and bizarre, even more than I thought it would be. I thought it would be this evil empire kind of thing. Like, man, I own you. I'm going to lock you. I'm going to bring you down here in the cage. I'm going to sell you. And it wasn't at all. And there was a study. I don't know if you saw this, but someone did a study. I just wrote someone did a study. I'm sure there was a person's name attached to it. But
I'm trying to highlight their name.
a person did a study Supposedly, and I leave out important info like that, but they reported that out of 218 wife sales, which is such a weird thing to say, wife sales,
It is really
um,
weird.
he had analyzed in between the 1760s and 1880s, 40 were cases where women were sold to their existing lovers, and only 4 of the sales were recorded as being non-consensual. 4 out
That's
of the
actually really, that's
218.
good.
It is.
It is. It's like a highlight out of out of wife selling.
Oh, it's like,
Wait, and I have something interesting too, because it goes against what we were saying. I mean, obviously, it's like reality crowd there, but it said public wife sales were sometimes attended by huge crowds. And in 1806, a sale in Hull, England, was postponed owing to the crowd, which was such an extraordinary occurrence, had gathered together, suggesting that wife sales were relatively rare events and therefore popular. So it didn't happen as often as you think. It said 300 between 1780 and 1850. Relatively insignificant compared to the instances of deserting. So a lot of people ended up just choosing to desert their spouse instead of actually paying, £2 to
or
sell them off.
ale, a pitcher of ale.
So does it make you think that a lot of that, like what you just said, is a lot of this was just that they ended up having an affair? They wanted to be with somebody else. And the spouse was like, you know what? It's a lot easier, because I think what we should mention too is that when a woman married a husband, she became legally responsible. When a woman married the husband, they became legally responsible for her. So if he abandoned her, he faced imprisonment. So why wouldn't a man just giveth his wife for £2 to another man that wanted her, and he didn't want to go to jail?
So how did he face imprisonment I guess, okay.
Remember, but it's the legal parsonage.
Yeah.
So he actually, he owned her. He supports her.
I get it. But so the times that he set up shop with a new family, he was risking that he would go to jail over that. So when he left his wife and do that, so she could come back at him and be like, look, I'm going to report you and you're going to end up in jail for this. Mm-hmm. But she couldn't sue him. I did read that. She couldn't sue him for adultery or anything like that.
No, they couldn't. No, that's,
she didn't have that right.
No, she didn't. Well, yeah, women didn't really have any rights.
No, I
at
mean,
all.
That's a whole slew of episodes we could talk about.
But the husband owned her. And normally people wanted to get married, so at least they had something, or women wanted to get married, so at least they had something.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So for me, it was kind of other than a couple things I'm about to share that might knock the mood back a little bit. For me, it was like, this seemed like kind of a cool event. Like, I've been divorced and it is a happy moment. It really is. And it is a good thing. And so it was almost like, I want to get out of this situation. I can't afford it. Cause I think you talk about, or we're going to talk about, the kind of, careers and what type of people this was that had to do this. And, if without a lack of money, I couldn't go this route. I don't want to be miserable looking at this person every day. I found someone else in town. This is the wife. I found someone else in town, the new blacksmith that rolled up in town, and I'm chilling with him. I like him. This is a great thing. My husband's cool with it because he found himself somebody else. Like, we're all good. Let's go make a celebration out of it at this point. For the most part. There are times where I think that it probably wasn't as great. And, I
like everything, it's give or take.
Yeah. But the whole property, women are property, your children are property. And we don't talk about as much as the children that were sold. That's weird to me regardless. But I guess if they're sold with their mom, that's why it was kind of like, we're just going to push them off.
I didn't read too much into that. Like, I didn't look further to see if, every time the mother actually had the children, or if like a father chose to sell the woman. Because remember, it's not legal.
Yeah.
So who knows? I didn't dig deeper.
Well, damn, your children had to be 11 or under, because at 12, they're off getting married on their own anyway. So,
True. God, that's horrible.
Yeah. So I thought it was kind of a silver lining, at least, that this wasn't going to be this negative story that I thought it would be completely around. And almost is kind of fascinating how, this culture of people were able to improvise, and
they were able to work around something.
Yeah. And
I know, I thought that too. They were able to try to make, it sounds like when we went into this, we said wife selling is miserable, horrible. And I mean, obviously it is, but when you actually find out the reason why they chose to do it, then you may understand why they chose to go that route. And a lot of
Right.
times, again, unhappy marriage. So anybody that's unhappy in any type of relationship, doesn't have to be marriage or friends or whatever, you don't want to be around it. You don't want to do it.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's
Hmm.
true. I went a little bit further on the music side, and so there were tons of engravings and
Okay.
just lots of information and stuff where people registered about this happening. So we knew that it existed because these records were passed off. We don't know to the extent of what the details were, only except for what was shared at this point. But there are two songs that have been passed on from this time about selling your wives that I'm going to read the lyrics of. That there's a guy, and maybe I'll post it on our website or share it on social media. A guy has like remade these songs, this modern guy that I can find his YouTube video to these two songs. And they're
What's
super,
his name?
man, you know, someone.
I'll have to look this up after.
I'll post it for sure. But this to me, so these two songs have been passed on since then. He remade them so we could hear it. But I'll read the lyrics. This one says, let's see, let me pull up the right one. All right, her swears. This is the song. This is the lyrics. Her swears like a trooper, and fights like a cock, and has gin her old feller many a hard knock. So now, yo, young fellers, as wanting a wife, come and bid for old Sally, the plague of Let's life. At 12 in the morning, the sale will begin. So you as want splicing, but there with your 10, which some of these, like, I can't get in that guinea talk.
That was definitely the newspaper announcement.
Yeah, like, but that one became a song. It became a song. And there's a second one too that's a little different and kind of actually pretty tragic. But this that was a song that was passed on to
That was
generations.
just somebody that was pissed off at his spouse.
It said, "Come and bid for old Sally,
She cusses.
the plague of Let's life." This dude's name was Let. She was the plague of his life. That's how he described it. But yeah, by all means, y'all come get her. Here she is.
I could hear the Beatles singing that.
Yeah, I could do,
You
actually.
could put a tune to that.
But that song, like, people have remade over the years. Like, that one was a popular one.
Mm.
Then there's one, I'm going to read the lyrics and we'll try to break down what it means. It's a little bit longer. This one's called John Hobbs. All right, this song. And again, this was passed on as like folk songs, generation.
Is this about him? Is this about him?
Yeah,
The
John
man
Hobbs.
who's selling?
Okay. I guess. Yes. All right.
Okay.
A jolly shoemaker, John Hobbs, John Hobbs. So this one's got some rhyme to it. So maybe we'll make us beat to it and like actually do it ourselves. There you go. A jolly shoemaker, John Hobbs. He married Jane Carter. I mean, they called her out. Like, here's Jane Carter. No damsel looks smarter, but he caught a tartar. John Hobbs, John Hobbs. He caught a tartar, John Hobbs. He tied a rope to her, John Hobbs, John Hobbs. He tied a rope to her, John Hobbs. To escape from hot water, to Smithfield he brought her, but nobody bought her, Jane Hobbs, Jane Hobbs. They were all afraid of Jane Hobbs. Wow. Oh, who will buy a wife, says Hobbs, John Hobbs. A sweet, pretty wife, says John Hobbs. But somehow they tell us, those wife-dealing fellas were all of the same sellers, John Hobbs, John Hobbs, and none of them wanted Jane Hobbs. The rope, it was ready, John Hobbs, John Hobbs. Come give me the rope, says John Hobbs.
This is long.
I won't stand to wrangle myself, and I will strangle and hang dingle dangle. So he killed himself because nobody would buy his wife with the rope that he tied her up to. Was the end of this one.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And this was passed on about this wife selling event. And I actually read a story, and I didn't share it, that was similar to this, where they did say that a guy tried killing himself because nobody would buy his wife. And he was just like, I need to get out of this. Like, I got to figure this out. Y'all aren't helping me here. And this, I don't know if it was.
The whole song is named after him. So I just think that he's really into himself. Because, he's talking about this wife and then he hung himself, but he named the song. He named it after himself.
And it became a folk song, though. And however, I will say, because this is how we are.
I have no sympathy for him.
Good old Jane. because we are human by nature and we love happy endings and we want to see
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. Someone wrote an alternate ending, basically where the wife cuts him down and they agree to work out their differences,
Oh
like a Hallmark
no,
movie. And that wasn't real.
that's not real.
Jane was like, all right, bitch, keep hanging there. Like, you're the one that brought me down here. So,
Exactly. You tried to sell me.
so I read those, and I definitely need to find the video and share it. And well, maybe we interview this guy that redid the music on it. He might
For
know
real.
more about this, and
Yeah,
we can do a follow-up episode.
that'd be fun.
And I'll find who someone is, and we'll figure out his name. But this was fascinating to me. I mean, like this, it took a spin for me. Like we talked about, where I thought, oh man, I'm going to go and this will get to a dark place. We're going to talk about women's rights and the women's movement, and we're, this chick, Erin went to, an all women's college. So I'm going to hear about all these things, and I'm gonna have to feel guilty for a little bit for what John Hobbs did. And like, this is what we're going to go down. And then I started reading and I was like, no, women instigated most all of this.
Yes, they
But,
did.
but I'll say this, all of the records that have been shared about this come from men. Every element, every record that was shared about this, and most things in history truly have come from men. And I read that somewhere by someone, again, that had said that. And to me, it makes me wonder, was it this happy ending that we think? Was it instigated by women all the time mostly? Or is it men kind of covering up the history of it after the fact, saying, look, we weren't that bad. This was something that we thought, that was, like we said, people were improvising because they wanted a divorce. And
I don't know. I mean, you got to give women some credit there too, because I feel as if, like when it flipped for me and I started to research it more and found out that women, or I mean, it's real that people are in unhappy marriages. It happens. So I can see this as a creative way to get out of something. I do believe that the men were more educated than women, if women were even, a lot of women in this poorer community were ever went to school. So I do think that it was just a way for them to get the hell out of their marriage. I mean, I know where you're going and I get it, but as a woman myself, I'd like to think that we're more resilient and we can figure things out too.
I like that point. I do. I got caught up in it's a man perspective, and I'm a cynic right now. Like I said, I really am of everything that I'm reading and learning about. This one's interesting me. So I like the happy ending, not for John Hobbs. He didn't have a very happy ending there, but I like the thought of the fact that, like we said, that people could improvise, and it's kind of what we do, in humanity, from time to time when we have to figure stuff out, we do it down to the point of I'm miserable in my household, which is an important thing, It
is very important. It's every single day that you have to wake up in that household.
Yeah. So I'm glad that it had the more positive spin for sure. And
I was too. I actually really liked that that women got a little bit more credit for the wife selling, that they actually may have been the reason why they were sold. And that's, I did too. I'm with you. I want to note this before we go further though, that there was a book.
Oh yeah.
And yes, and it was Thomas Hardy, who is quite famous. And he wrote a novel called The Mayor of Casterbridge in 1886. And it was pretty much, the synopsis was the return of a wife after 18 years that resulted in this man's downfall. And so he got really drunk. I'm going to really crush this into a tiny story. He got really drunk. He was bad tempered, and he decided, they were near a market. So he decided he was going to sell his wife and his baby, like a baby daughter. Right. And so he sells them. And then the next morning he wakes up and recognizes, oh my God, what the hell did I do? Yeah. And he decides not to drink for 21 years. And he doesn't. But anyways, it all kind of shatters because he sells his wife to like this sailor, and he's lost at sea. And then she comes back, and he's been pretty successful. And when she comes back, he's like, oh shit, everyone's going to know my secret, because he didn't want to tell anybody he sold his wife and baby daughter. Right. Anyways, on and on and on. But yeah, so this was in a famous novel that Hardy wrote. So people were intrigued by this as much as you and I have been.
And I like that novel. Someone wrote a book, The Mayor of Casterbridge.
Someone wrote a book? It's Thomas Hardy.
I know. I was literally like doing some fast notes because I know I can talk too much, and I was like, basically, I wrote this. Basically, the story is central character sells his wife at the beginning of the story, and then it haunts him the rest of his life, and then it destroys him. End of story.
I mean, yes, that's actually a better synopsis than mine. I was given a little bit
No,
more.
I like yours.
I'm as my husband always tells me, I mean, I talk a lot. That's probably why podcasts are working for me. And
that's my problem. That's why I was trying to
I can't make things concise.
I can't either. I just had so much to talk about that I was like, I don't care about the dude's name and any of this stuff. But I promise moving forward, I'll try to at least talk about some of the people that I
think they're as famous as Hardy.
True,
he has quite a few books.
Like the other guy is someone I can't go back and figure that out. But no, I really like this week's, and I think moving forward, and just so everybody knows, for this episode is the first one where we really dive into, the untold history. As the last episode, the first one was more set the stage of history. This is more of what excites us, talking about these things we didn't know. Whether or not as a listener, that's totally up to you. Maybe you learned a new fact, you learned something different, or maybe you learned that we have no idea what we're talking about and it better. And that's cool. We'll have you on and you can talk to us about it.
Please, we'd love it.
Anybody can be the expert with this. But the stuff that we want to do, like I'm excited about whatever we decide for next week. And eventually I think we should start integrating that and engaging the listeners with helping us to decide between topics. I don't have any listed out for now. For next week, I'm sure we'll figure out what we think's best. I did share a story with you today, and this just kind of shows some of the things we can dive into even further. Jesse James. I read this story of Jesse James, the robber, the famous guy in the West, that went around shooting people and stealing money. Anyway, there was a lady that fed him one time and gave him a place to sleep one night. And she was about to lose her house, and he went and gave her the money to pay off all of the mortgage so that she wouldn't lose her house. He literally said, here's all the money, but I need you to give me a receipt. He specifically told her, I need a receipt. I'm sure he was doing his taxes or whatnot during that time, but, and she gave him the receipt, and he chased the banker down and got the money back that he gave her for the mortgage.
Sam, what would you expect as Jesse James?
But I read that and I was like, this is why I love this show and the premise of what we can do, because it's endless of these stories that you don't know, just small stories that we can talk about. We can have a compilation episode of just one person like an Abraham Lincoln and talk about the 30 things you didn't know about him, and just it's interesting to me about all of these stories that get lost, in the collection and the time of history. And I'm fascinated by it. And if we have a couple other people that are fascinated enough to listen, I'm excited to start interviewing some people and getting other insight input that are smarter than I am. And
me.
No, that's why you're here, is because you are the smart one. I'm here talking about someone did something.
Not at all.
This guy wrote a book and it was about some stuff. Here it is, kind of a thing. But no, I really enjoyed this episode, and I like that this is the kickstart really of things that we're going to talk about moving on.
I feel like, Jeff, I need to say one more thing about wife selling, the decline. We didn't talk about when it actually declined.
Oh,
and it was not until the 1840s. And then it even shifted over into the colonies.
Yes, it was.
And they didn't like it. I just wanted to say that. So it came over to America and in 1645, Hartford, Connecticut. And there was a reported case there. And it was for 20 shillings. And there was an argument between the two men. And then this woman claimed that she was both their wives. But anyways, the changing attitude shifted in the 1840s. And obviously women were the ones that stood up and stated that it was a threat and an insult to their sex. So, and then then the newspaper started to catch on, just like anything, ideas evolve. But I just wanted to state that yes, I mean, obviously it went into decline and we didn't like that. I mean, then you talked about in the 70s it happened, but the real big shift happened.
The last known case that I saw in this broad research was 1913 that they had saw. Where it was but it was like one little isolated case or something. And then, like I said, then the effects of the law that was put in place for marriage, basically men having control, lasted through the 70s, even for women here in the States. And honestly, like we said, has lasted through now. And that premise, Leave It to Beaver and those shows that you watch and everything that take you back to that time. I mean, It's very, it's great to think where we've come, in 2020, so to speak, in a lot of ways. And I think about this for my wife, and I think about this for my daughters, more importantly, that why would they ever, and you can speak on this more than I can, but why should they ever have to feel inferior,
Hmm.
because they're women? It's such a ridiculous thing, but it exists for sure.
Oh, it definitely does. And I think I should note that, we keep talking about the 50s, 60s, 70s, and all this stuff, but I have always found that I feel lucky to live in a time where I can choose to stay home if I want to
Hmm.
and raise my kids. There's nothing wrong with that. Or I can choose to have children, work, or choose to
Yep.
work and not get married and not have children, or have children without a man.
Yeah.
So we have these choices, and none of them are wrong.
Or
And
having children with another woman. I mean,
exactly, yeah, all of
it's
it, yeah.
you're right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think the progress and where we're headed is great. And that's why, and I won't get into this because this will open up so many things, but that's why I feel like there's so much tension, this day and age in this country specifically, because there's so many movements and things happening that should progress, and we should progress as humans. And I think a lot of people just are kind of stuck, in, well, this is what I know, this is what I've always known, this is the way it's always been, and we talked about that last week. And that's unfortunately how a lot of history gets passed down is, these are the good old days, these are things we remember, let's talk good about those and make them, be glorified.
Mhm.
So anyway, with that being said, I really enjoyed this episode. I don't
Yeah,
want
me too.
to open that up anymore. We can save that for future things. But I really like this, and I'm excited about next week's, whatever we decide, whatever you want to throw out there and say, look, this is what we should do. I'm cool with it because I kind of threw this one on you. So
Well, I liked it. I mean, like I said, each of these is throwing me for a hook. Last week's did, and this one as well. And I hope it threw our viewers too. I noticed that the 30-minute mark is when we flipped it on them. So,
yeah, well, I
uh-huh.
honestly thought we would make it to the 30-minute mark and be done with this one
No,
this week.
I did too. I did too. I was kind of
I was like,
worried.
this is going to be short, 5 minutes. We'll tell the story about the
Yeah.
double cousin thing. That'll give us a couple minutes. But I think we talk, and we like to talk, and
Hmm.
hopefully it's not boring. At least doesn't bore me talking to you.
Hmm.
So I enjoy it. And I honestly enjoy doing the research of this because I am a
I did
nerd
too.
and I'm learning myself things that I didn't know. So selfishly, even if we'd never get a listener, I want to keep doing this because I'm learning, and it makes me have to learn something new each week.
Me
So.
too. I feel the same way. So,
So
with
visit
that said,
yesteryearuntold.com. Click on that donate button. I'm kidding. I'm not going to promote that more and more each time, but I might slip it in just because
donate donuts, donate.
whatever. If you enjoyed this and you feel led, right? If you feel led to donate some donuts, by all means, please do that.
Coffee.
Whatever it is. No, this is for fun, and we enjoy doing it, and
Mhm.
I hope that it continues to grow and keep turning into something cooler and cooler. But yeah, good week for us, I think.
Yes, I think so too. Going into next. I'm excited about the next one already.
All right, until next time, deuces.
And send your questions in if you have any or comments on yesteryear.com.
I feel like I can't say anything else because I already said deuces, which meant I was saying bye. But now I said something else again. But they can't see you doing the deuces right now. So.
Oh yeah, I did the they can't see me.
We're gonna say deuces again, or I'm gonna say bye because the deuce is kind of
Let's say it at
dumb.
the same time. Ready?
Oh, wait, we're
3,
saying deuces.
2,
Hold on.
1.
Deuces.
Deuces.